Test, test, test. Test, test, test. All right, that looks to be working. All right. Mm. Okay. All right, there we go. So, I'm going to continue on my journey here of going back and to the foundings. I really want a better foundation on a better word, America, and what those foundings are for. So I'm going back to primary documents, primary research. I've moved up to the Federalist Papers, did Constitution, I haven't done the Declaration of Independence, which probably is something I should do. But all right, let's get going. All right, undo at least one Federalist paper before continuing on, because this is the one. They're a little drier than some of the other stuff I've done, but they're fun. They got some interesting stuff going on. Oh, what just happened? All right. Federalist number 10. All right, let's get this in. Oh, no. All right. I need to make this better. James Madison. The same subject, the Union as a safeguard against domestic factionism and insurrection. All right, so this is the same thing that he's been talking about. To the people of the state of New York, among the numerous advantages promised by a well-constructed union, none deserve to be more accurately developed than its tendency to break and control the violence of faction. So a lot of the founding fathers were big worries about factionalism. The friend of popular governments never finds himself so much alarmed for their character and fate as when he contemplates their propensity to this dangerous vice. He will not fail, therefore, to set a due value on any plan without violating the principles to which he is attached, provided a proper cure for it. The instability, injustice, and confusion introduced into public councils have been the moral disease under which popular governments everywhere perished. So he's already starting his trash talk on the the Articles of Confederation, which Madison really, really fucking hates, as they continue to be the favorite and fruitful topics from which the adversaries to liberty derive their most specious declamations. The valuable improvements made by the American constitutions on the popular models, both ancient and modern, cannot certainly be too much admired. Oh, he's talking everybody up now. But it would be unwarrantable partially to contend that we have effectively obviated the danger on this side, as was wished and expected. Complaints are everywhere, heard from our most considerate and virtuous citizens, equally the friends of public and private faith, and public and personal liberty, that our governments are too unstable, that the public good is disregarded in the conflicts of rival parties, and the measures are too often decided not according to the rules of justice and the rights of the minor party, but to the superior force of interested and overbearing majority. So this is a big ass problem in the Articles of Confederation, that the federal government just wasn't able to mediate any fucking disputes between the states or anybody else. It was just like so weak. And then more often than not, just the state that had more influence, or the party that had more influence, just was able to get their way. However anxiously we must wish that these complaints had no foundation, the evidence of these facts will not permit us to deny that they are in some degree true. It will be found, indeed, on a candid review of our situation, that some of the distress under which we labor have been erroneously charged on the operation of our governments. But it will be found at the same time that other causes will not alone account for many of our heaviest misfortunes, and particularly for that prevailing and increasingly distrust of public engagements and alarm for private rights, which are echoed from one end of the continent to the other. These must be chiefly, if not wholly, effects of unsteadiness, injustice, with the factious spirit has tainted our public admirations. So he's just going on to trash talking the current form, the federal government as it is as the time. By a faction, I understand that a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or minority of the whole, who are united and actuated by some common impulse of passion or of interest, adverse to the rights of other citizens, or to the permanent and aggregate interest of the community. There are two methods of curing mischiefs of faction, the one by removing its causes, the other by controlling its effects. All right, so let's see if he goes into these two methods. There are, again, two methods of removing the causes of faction. All right, so this is on the removing of the causes of faction. The one by destroying liberty, which is essential to its existence. The other by giving every citizen the same opinions, the same passions, and the same interest. I don't think he's going to go for this. It sounds like he's already deriding this option. It could never be more truly said of the first remedy that it is worse than the disease. Liberty is to faction as what air is to fire, an ailment without which would instantly expires. But it could be less folly to abolish liberty, which is essential to political life because it nourishes faction, than it would be to wish the annihilation of air, which is essential to animal life because it imparts to fire its destructive agency. So he's saying this cause wouldn't be worth it. This is too much. It's not, sure, we could get rid of factionalism by destroying liberty, but, you know, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The second expedient is as impracticable as the first, and would be unwise. As long as the reason of man continues fallible, and he is at liberty to exercise it, different opinions will be formed. So it's always like the saying goes, it's like, you have 3 people in the room, you have 4 opinions on what you're supposed to do. As long as the connection subsists between his reason and self-love, his opinions and his passions will have the reciprocal influence on each other, and the former will be objects to which the latter will attach themselves. The diversity in its faculties of men, from which the rights of property originate, is not less insuperable obstacles to a uniformity of interest. The protection of these facilities is the first object of government, from the protection of different and unequal faculties acquiring property. The possession of different degrees and kinds of property immediately results, and from the influence of these sentiments and views and respective proprietors ensures a division of the society into different interested parties. So, all right, so he says, the other way we can get rid of factionalism is if everyone agrees. And then he probably unnecessary, goes into great detail of why that's not possible. People have different objects. He says properties. This will always cause divisions in societies because there's different interests, there's different parties. We're never going to all think alike. So that's not going to be a solution for us. The latent causes of a faction are thus sown into the nature of man, and we see them everywhere, brought into different degrees of activity, according to the different circumstances of civil society, a zeal for different opinions concerning religion, concerning government, and many other points, as well as speculation of practice, an attachment to different leaders ambitiously contending for preeminence and power, or to persons of other descriptions, whose fortunes have been interested in the human passions, have in turn divided mankind into parties, inflamed them into mutual animosity, and rendered them into much more disposed to vex or oppress each other than cooperate for the common good. All right, so saying factionalism it's just part of us. It is built into us and into our nature. So strong is this propensity of mankind to fall into mutual animosities that where no substantial occasion presents itself, the most frivolous and fanciful distinctions have been sufficient to kindle their unfriendly passions and excite us to their most violent conflicts. So even says these are frivolous and fanciful. It's kind of like the bigotry is small differences. It's like even these small little differences will cause us even violent conflicts, or even just conflict in general. But the most common and durable source of factions has to be the various and unequal distribution of property. Those who hold and those who are without property have ever formed distinct interest in society. Those who are creditors and those who are debtors fall under a like discrimination. Oh, how things have not changed. A landed interest, a manufacturing interest, a mercantile interest, a moneyed interest, with many lesser interests, grow up of necessity in civilized civilization, and divide them into different classes, actuated by different sentiments and views. The regulation of these various and interfering interests forms the principal task of modern legislation, and involves the spirit of party and faction in the necessity and ordinary operations of government. All right, I was saying this is where the government can come in. We've already established that factionalism is innate in people, but how do we form a government with that in mind? No man is allowed to be the judge in his own cause, because his interest would certainly bias his judgment, and not improbably corrupt his integrity. You can't say your own farts don't smell. With equal, nay, with greater reason, a body of men are unfit to be both judges and parties at the same time. Separation of powers. Yet, what are many of the most important acts of legislation, but so many judicial determinations, not indeed concerning the rights of single persons, but concerning the rights of large bodies of citizens? So what is a law but a judicial determination? And what are different classes of legislators but advocates and parties to the causes which they determine? Is a law proposed concerning private debts? It is a question to which the creditors are parties on one side and the debtors of the other. So you can't make a law without it basically being a judicial determination. Because no matter what, there's going to be two parties on any side of the law, or any side of the bill or law or whatever. Justice ought to hold the balance between them, yet the parties are and must be themselves the judges. And the most numerous party, or in other words, the most powerful, must be expected to prevail. Shall domestic manufactures be encouraged, and in what degree? By what restrictions on foreign manufacturers? Oh, that is timely with the talk of tariffs at the moment. Are questions which would be differently decided by the landed and the manufacturing classes, and probably by neither, which a sole regard to justice and public good. The approximation of taxes on various descriptions of property is an act which seems to require the most exact impartiality, yet there is perhaps no legislative act in which greater opportunity and temptation are given to a prominent party to trample the rules of justice. Every shilling with which they overburden the inferior number is a shilling saved to their own pockets. So, by nature of being in the society, it is impossible to be completely objective to it. They're going to have to make these unfair and unjust rules. So how are they going to do it? What's the solution here, Madison? It is vain to say that the enlightened statesman will be able to adjust these classing interests and render them all subservient to the public good. Enlightened statesmen will not always be there at the helm. We won't always have the best leaders. So we need to have a system that is able to do these things, that doesn't matter who's at the helm. Nor in many cases can such an adjustment be made at all without taking into the view indirect and remote considerations, which will rarely prevail over the immediate interest which one party may find disregarding in the rights of another or in the good of the whole. The inference to which we are brought is that the causes of faction cannot be removed, and the relief to be sought in the means of controlling its effects. So we can't get rid of the causes of factionalism, but we can mitigate or control the effects of factionalism. All right. If a faction consists of less than a majority, relief is supplied by the Republican principle, which enables the majority to defeat its sinister views by regular vote. It may clog the administration, it may convulse the society, but it will be unable to execute and mask its violence under the forms of the Constitution. So he's starting his advocation for the Constitution over the Articles. When a majority is included in a faction, the form of popular government, on the other hand, enables it to sacrifice its ruling passion or interest, both the public good and the rights of other citizens, to secure the public good and... Fucking shit. Are you fucking shitting me? I just lost my fucking place. All right. Which enables the majority to defeat the center views by regular vote. It may clog the administration, it may convulse the society, but it will be unable to execute and mask its violence under the forms of Constitution. When a majority is included in a faction, the form of popular government, on the other hand, enables it to sacrifice to its ruling passion or interest both the public good and the rights of other citizens. All right, so this is the danger of just the one party in power, the powerful party. To secure the public good and private rights against danger of such a faction, and at the same time to preserve the spirit and form of popular government, it then is the great object to which our inquiries are directed. Let me add that it is the great I'm on Google. Desideratum, something that is needed or wanted. I did not know this word. By which the form of government can be rescued from the opprobrium. I just got to bring Latin into this. Under which it has so long labored and been recommended to the esteem and adoption of mankind. All right. All right, Madison. You've pointed out a lot of rough things. Let's get... We need a sunnier solution. By which means is this object attainable? Evidently, by one of two only. Either the existence of the same passion or interest in the majority at the same time must be prevented, or the majority, having such coexistent passion of interest, must be rendered by the numbers and local situation unable to concert and carry into effect schemes of oppression. If the impulse and the opportunity be suffered to coincide, we well know that neither moral nor religious motives can be relied on as an adequate control. So we can't rely on people's moral code. We got to have something stronger than that. They are not found to be such on injustice and violence of individuals, and lose the efficiency in proportion to the numbers combined together. That is, in proportion as their efficacy becomes needful. From this view of the subject, it may be concluded that pure democracy, by which I mean society consisting of a small number of citizens who assemble and administer the government in person, can admit of no cure for the mischiefs of faction. A common passion or interest will, in almost every case, be felt by a majority of the whole. So we don't have to worry about factionalism in tiny little community democracies. A communication and concert results from the form of government itself, and there is nothing to check the inducements to sacrifice the weaker party or an obnoxious individual. Hence it is that such democracies have been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have never been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as has been violent in their deaths. Ooh, he was not a fan of pure democracy either. Thoracic politicians who have patronized the species of government have erroneously supposed that by reducing mankind to perfect equality in their political rights, they would at the same time be perfectly equalized and assimilated in their passions, their opinions, and their possessions, their opinions, and their passions. I should learn how to speak better. A republic, by which I mean a government in which the scheme of representation takes place, opens a different prospect and promises the cure for which we are seeking. Let us examine the points in which it varies from pure democracy. We shall comprehend both the nature and cure and efficacy which it must derive from union. All right, so he's going to contradict pure democracy and republicanism, which is a diffuse form of democracy. Be a way to put it. All right. The two great points of difference between democracy and republic are, first, the delegation of government in the latter to a small number of citizens elected by the rest. Secondly, the greater number of citizens and the greater sphere of country, over which the latter may be extended. The effect of the first difference, which is the delegation of the government, on the one hand, to refine and enlarge the public views by passing them through the medium of a chosen body of citizens, whose wisdom may be best discern the true interest of their country, and whose patriotism and love of justice will be least likely to sacrifice it to temporary or partial considerations. Under such regulations, it may well happen that the public voice, pronounced by the representatives of the people, will be more constant to the public good than if pronounced by the people themselves, convinced for the purpose. On the other hand, the effect may be inverted. Men of factious tempers, of local prejudices, or sinister design, may be by intrigue, by corruption, or by other means, first obtain suffrages, and then betray the interest of the people. The question resulting is whether small or extensive republics are more favorable to the election of proper guardians of the public weal, and it's clearly decided in the favor of the latter by two obvious considerations. All right. So why is this? Why is this second option better? In the first place, it is to be remarked that however small the republic may be, the representatives must be raised to a certain number in order to guard against cabals of a few. So you got to at least have a certain size of your representative body, whatever it is, to prevent this like just a few guys in the Senate, House, whatever, to control everything. And that, however large it may be, they must be limited to a certain number in order to guard against the confusion of the multitude. So it can't be too big either. Hence, the number of representatives in the two cases not being in proportion... Motherfucker. That was not cool. Just gonna fall off camera. Don't do that again. This mount sucks ass. Oh. That was funny, though. All right. Hence, the number of representatives in the two cases not being in proportion to that of the two constituents and being proportionally greater than the small republic, it follows that if the proportion of fit characters are not less than the large than in the small, the former will be present a greater option and consequently a greater probability of a fit choice. All right. This number of representatives, not exciting. In the next place, as each representative will be chosen by a greater number of citizens in the large than in the small, it will be more difficult for unworthy candidates to practice with success the vicious arts by which elections are too often carried, and the suffrages of people being more free, will be more likely to center in the men who possess the most attractive merit and the most diffuse and established characters. It must be confessed that in this, as in most other cases, there is a mean, on both sides of which inconveniences will be found to lie. All right, so no matter what we do, on wherever the center is, on either side, it's going to be annoying for some reason. What are the reasons? By enlarging too much the number of electors, you render the representatives too little acquainted with all their local circumstances. So, all right, and lesser interest, as by reducing it too much, you render him unduly attached to these, and too little fit to comprehend and pursue the great and national objects. The federal constitution forms a happy combination in this respect. The great and aggregate interest being referred to the national and the local of the state legislators. Almost done. The other point of difference is the greater number of citizens and extent of territory which they might brought with compass of republicanism than of democratic government. And it is of this circumstance principally which renders factious combinations less to be dreaded in the former than the latter. The smaller of society, the fewer probable will be the distinct parties of interest composing it. The fewer the distinct parties and interest, the more frequently will be the majority found the same party. The smaller number of individuals composing a majority, the smaller the compass with which they are placed, the more easily that they will concert and execute their plans of oppression. He's going on and on about this. All right. Extend the sphere, and you take the greater variety of parties and interest. You make it less probable that the majority of the whole will have the common motive to invade the rights of citizens, or if the common motives exist. It will be more difficult for all who feel it to discover their own strength, and to act in unison with each other. Besides other impediments, it may be remarked that there is a conscious and unjust dishonorable purpose. Communication is always checked by distrust in proportion to the numbers of concurrences necessary. All right. Oh, boy. What is going on with this? What's going on with this? Why is this being so laggy? Alright. I think I'm going to try to fix this. I'm going to take a little break.